The voice came through a telephone that had not been connected to power in 20 years. Mila Collins stood perfectly still, one hand wrapped around the cold black receiver, the other still holding her rain-soaked delivery bag against her chest. Outside, thunder rolled over the wooded hills beyond Blackridge, and rain struck the windows of the abandoned mansion in hard silver sheets. She had been sent there 11 minutes before midnight with a small paper package from Bellwether Pharmacy, though the order contained no customer name, no apartment number, and no instructions beyond one sentence. Leave it inside the front hall. The delivery fee had been $50, almost 5 times what Mila usually earned on a late-night run, and with only $18 left in her checking account, she had ignored the uneasy feeling in her stomach and followed the navigation app to the end of a narrow 2-lane road. The mansion had appeared through the storm like a memory no one wanted. 3 stories of dark stone, boarded railings wrapped in dead ivy. There were no cars in the driveway, no porch light, no sign that anyone had lived there in years. Mila had tried calling the number attached to the order, but the line went straight to silence, not voicemail. Silence. She should have left the package on the steps and driven away. Instead, she had noticed the front door standing open by 3 inches. "Hello?" she had called. "Bellwether Delivery." No answer. The wind pushed the door wider. Light appeared across the dusty floor inside. That made no sense. The power meter beside the porch was missing. Mila stepped into the foyer anyway, telling herself there might be an elderly customer inside. Someone sick, someone unable to reach the door. The air smelled of cold stone, old wood, and something faintly metallic. Her sneakers squeaked against the marble floor as she placed the pharmacy package on a narrow table beneath a cracked mirror. Then the telephone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. At the far end of the hall, an old black rotary phone beneath a layer of dust. There was no cord attached to it. Mila stared at the receiver. The 4th ring echoed through the house. She thought of leaving. The 5th ring came louder. Not louder in volume exactly, closer, as though the sound were coming from inside her ribs. Mila crossed the foyer slowly. Every instinct told her not to touch it, but another thought pushed through the fear. What if someone needed help? She lifted the receiver. Static whispered against her ear. Then came a man's breathing, slow and controlled, but strained beneath the surface. "Hello," Mila said. The response was immediate. "Do not say your name." His voice was deep, calm, and edged with the kind of authority that made her straighten without understanding why. Mila glanced toward the open front door. "Who is this?" A pause. Somewhere behind the static she heard the faint scrape of metal over stone. "Listen carefully," the man said. "You must leave the house before they arrive." "Before who arrives?" He ignored the question. "Is the package still in your possession?" Mila looked toward the table. "It's in the foyer. Are you the customer?" Another silence. This one lasted long enough for her to hear rainwater dripping from the hem of her jacket onto the floor. "The package was never the delivery," he said. "You were." Mila's grip tightened around the receiver. "That isn't funny. I assure you nothing about this is amusing." His voice weakened for half a second, then returned sharper. "Look beneath the desk." Mila should have hung up. She should have run back to her car and called the police from the highway. Instead, she crouched and found a small brass plate fixed to the wood. A crown pierced by a single thorn. Her breath caught. The same symbol was engraved on the silver pendant beneath her shirt, the only thing her mother had left her before dying 15 years ago. Mila pulled the necklace free with trembling fingers. "How do you know about this?" she whispered. The line crackled. "Because your mother once stood where you are standing." The hallway seemed to narrow around her. "You knew my mother, Evelyn Collins," he said softly, and the sound of that name in a stranger's voice made Mila's heart strike hard against her chest. No one in Blackridge knew her mother's full name. Mila had used her father's records for years. Even her employer knew only that her parents were gone. She rose slowly, staring into the dark mirror above the table. "Who are you?" she asked again. The man inhaled, and for the first time his composure slipped. She heard exhaustion, pain, and something older than both. "My name is Luca Ferraro." The name meant nothing to her. Yet the entire house seemed to react. The yellow light dimmed, the walls gave a low shudder. Somewhere below the floor, a lock turned by itself. Mila stepped back. A narrow door beneath the staircase swung inward, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. "I don't understand," she said. "You will," Luca answered. Then his voice dropped to a whisper that felt impossibly close, as if he stood just behind her instead of speaking from some hidden place beneath the earth. "Mila Collins, at last," you answered. Mila did not move toward the staircase. The open door beneath it breathed out a current of air so cold that the rainwater on her sleeves seemed to turn to ice. She kept the receiver pressed to her ear and stared into the darkness below. "How do you know my name?" she asked. Luca answered without hesitation. "The house recognized you." Mila looked at the black telephone, then at the silver pendant resting against her jacket. "Houses do not recognize people. This one does." A distant sound traveled through the line, like chains shifting across a stone floor. Luca drew a careful breath. "You have less than 10 minutes. Take the package and leave through the back entrance." Mila glanced toward the front door. Her car sat beyond the rain, barely visible beneath the trees. "You just told me the package was not the delivery. It is still important. Then explain why." Silence followed. Mila had spent most of her life hearing silence whenever she asked questions about her mother. Social workers had offered paperwork. Doctors had offered sympathy. No one had ever offered the truth. Now a stranger hidden somewhere beneath an abandoned mansion had spoken Evelyn Collins's name as if he had been expecting her daughter for years. Mila set the receiver against her shoulder, crossed the foyer, and picked up the pharmacy bag. "I am not leaving until you tell me what is happening." Luca's voice hardened. "This is not bravery. It is unnecessary risk. You do not know anything about me. I know you accepted a midnight delivery in a storm because the payment could cover part of your electric bill." Mila froze. "I know your car has needed a new alternator for 3 months. I know you worked 14 hours yesterday and still gave your dinner to the man outside the bus station." Her eyes moved slowly across the empty hall. "Have you been watching me?" "No." For the first time, anger entered his voice. Not directed at her, but at the idea itself. "I learned those things when you lifted the receiver. The line carries more than sound." Mila looked down at the telephone. "That is impossible. So is a disconnected phone ringing." She could not argue with that. A flash of lightning filled the foyer, and for an instant the cracked mirror reflected her clearly. Pale face, wet brown hair, tired eyes, and the small pendant glowing faintly at her throat. She thought of her apartment on the west side of Blackridge, where a red notice waited beneath the door. She thought of the collection calls, the overdue medical balance that had survived her mother by 15 years, and the $18 left in her account. None of it had made her feel as trapped as Luca's next words. "Your mother arranged for you to come here." Mila's fingers tightened around the paper bag. "She died when I was 10. I know. Then she could not have arranged a delivery tonight. Not directly." The light beneath the staircase flickered. Luca continued, quieter now. "Evelyn left instructions with people who were told to wait until the midnight line awakened. Tonight it did." Mila looked at the symbol beneath the desk, the crown, the thorn, the same mark her mother had once told her never to show anyone. "Why me?" "Because you are the last person it will answer." The words settled heavily between them. Mila remembered her mother sitting beside a hospital window, too weak to stand, but still reaching up to fasten the pendant around her daughter's neck. "Keep this close," Evelyn had whispered. "One day, someone may need you to remember who you are." Mila had believed it was only something mothers said when they knew they were leaving. Now the memory felt like a door opening. "Where are you?" she asked. Luca did not answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its command and carried something far more unsettling: honesty. "Beneath the oldest part of this city, in a room designed to keep me from being found. Are you a prisoner?" For the moment, Mila stared down the staircase. "And my mother knew you. She saved my life once." Another pause. "I failed to save hers." The confession was so calm that it sounded heavier than grief. Mila lowered her gaze. She should have hated him for saying it. Instead, she heard the weight he had carried behind every word. Outside, tires rolled slowly over the gravel drive. Headlights swept across the boarded windows. Luca's voice changed at once. "They are here." Mila turned toward the front door as 3 dark vehicles stopped beyond the porch. Several figures stepped into the rain, all wearing grey coats. "Who are they?" she whispered. "Men who will call me their king." Luca's breathing sharpened through the line. "Do not believe them." The front gate closed by itself with a deep metallic sound. Mila held the package in one hand and the receiver in the other. "You told me to use the back entrance." "It is too late for that." A knock sounded against the front door. 3 slow, measured strikes. Then a polite male voice called from outside. "Miss Collins, we are here to take you somewhere safe." Mila's heart began to race. Luca spoke over the line, each word low and precise. "Take the package. Go downstairs. Lock the door behind you." Mila looked into the darkness beneath the staircase. "You said I needed to leave. The plan has changed." The knocking came again. This time the old wood trembled in its frame. Mila stepped toward the stairs. "What is under this house?" she asked. The distant chains fell silent. Luca answered, "The first truth your mother died protecting." Mila stepped through the narrow doorway and pulled it shut behind her just as the front door opened above. The lock beneath the staircase turned on its own with a heavy click. sealing her inside a passage barely wide enough for her shoulders. She held the paper package against her chest and kept the receiver pressed to her ear, though the telephone cord ended somewhere in the wall behind her. "Keep moving," Luca said. His voice was quieter now, but more urgent. "There are 32 steps. At the bottom you will find a red door." Mila began descending. The stone stairs were damp and uneven, and the only light came from thin glass tubes embedded in the walls. One by one, they awakened as she passed, glowing a dim amber that reminded her of hospital hallways after midnight. Above her, measured footsteps entered the foyer. The men in grey coats did not shout. They did not break anything. Their calmness frightened her more than noise would have. "How many are there?" she whispered. "4 inside, 2 outside. How can you know that? This house was built to report danger to the throne." "And you are the throne?" Luca did not answer. Mila reached the 10th step. The air grew colder. On the 15th, she heard a man above say, The liner voice replied, "Then the Collins girl is here." Mila nearly missed the next step. "They know who I am. They know what you are carrying," Luca said. "Do not let them take it." She looked down at the pharmacy bag. "I still do not know what is inside, neither do they. That is why they will not risk damaging it." At the bottom of the stairs stood a dark red door, marked with the same crown and thorn. There was no handle, only a circular opening at its center. Mila touched the silver pendant at her throat. The necklace, yes. She placed it into the opening. The door shuddered, then opened inward. Beyond it stretched a tunnel lined with old bricks and narrow iron pipes. A dry current of air moved through the darkness, carrying the scent of dust and rain. Mila removed the pendant and hurried inside. The red door closed behind her. A second later, someone tried it from the other side. "Miss Collins," the polite voice called through the wood. "You are in danger. The person speaking to you is not who he claims to be." Mila stopped. Luca's silence filled the receiver. "Tell me they are lying," she said. "They are lying. That is not enough." The man behind the door continued. "Luca Ferraro disappeared 7 nights ago. We were sent by his council to protect you." Mila looked down the tunnel. Luca's answer came slowly. "A governing body that serves beneath the king." "And who is the king?" The lights along the tunnel flickered. For several seconds, Luca said nothing. Then, stranger behind the door spoke first. "The man on that telephone is Luca Ferraro, ruler of the Ferraro court and sovereign of every vampire territory east of the Mississippi River." Mila felt the tunnel tilt beneath her. She gripped the wall. "Vampire?" The word sounded foolish in her own voice, like something from a late-night movie, yet nothing about the mansion, the telephone, or the men hunting her felt ordinary. Luca exhaled through the line. "This was not how I intended you to learn." Mila stared into the darkness ahead. "You are telling me vampires are real?" "Yes, and you are their king?" "Yes." Above the red door, metal shifted against metal. The men were searching for another way through. Mila forced herself to keep walking. "You could have told me that before I entered the tunnel. You would not have believed me. I barely believe you now. Belief is not required. Movement is." She almost laughed, but fear caught the sound before it escaped. "You always talk like that?" "Only when people ignore sensible instructions." The answer was so dry, so unexpectedly human that Mila kept moving. The tunnel curved beneath the property for nearly 50 yards before opening into a circular chamber. An old wooden table stood in the center beneath a hanging yellow lamp. On it rested a framed photograph covered in dust. Mila approached and wiped the glass with her sleeve. Her breath stopped. Evelyn Collins stood in the picture, younger than Mila remembered her, wearing a dark blue coat and holding the same silver pendant. Beside her stood a tall man dressed in black. His face was pale, almost colorless, his expression restrained, his eyes fixed on the camera with an intensity that seemed unchanged by time. "That is you," Mila whispered. "Yes, this photograph looks older than my mother. It was taken 26 years ago." Luca's face had not aged a day. Mila lowered the receiver slightly, then brought it back to her ear. "What did she do for you?" Before Luca could answer, another voice sounded through the chamber, not from the telephone, from a speaker hidden inside the wall. She discovered a traitor. The voice belonged to the polite man at the door, and that mistake cost Evelyn Collins everything. The yellow lamp dimmed. A panel on the far wall slid open, revealing another flight of stairs descending deeper underground. Luca's voice sharpened. "Mila, take the photograph and go down. Where does it lead?" "To the midnight line." The hidden speaker crackled again. "Do not listen to him. He is the reason your mother died." Mila stared at Luca's unchanging face in the photograph. Her fingers trembled, but she picked it up. "Luca," she said, "when I reach the bottom, you are going to tell me the truth." His answer came without hesitation. every part of it. Behind her, the red door began to unlock. Mila hurried down the newly revealed staircase with the photograph tucked beneath her arm and the paper package pressed against her side. The black receiver remained at her ear, though there was no visible wire connecting it to anything. Behind her, the lock inside the red door turned with a slow metallic scrape. "How much time do I have?" she asked. "Less than a minute," Luca said. "At the bottom, turn right. Do not touch the walls." "Why?" "Because they remember blood." Mila decided she did not want an explanation yet. The staircase descended farther than the height of the mansion should have allowed. 40 steps became 60. The air changed from damp and earthy to dry and unnaturally cold. Thin red lines began to glow beneath the stone, spreading ahead of her like veins under pale skin. She kept to the center. Above, the red door opened. Footsteps entered the circular chamber. She took the photograph, a man said. "Let her," answered the polite voice. "The king has already led her where we need her." Mila reached the bottom and turned right. A corridor stretched beneath a row of yellow lamps, each one flickering awake as she passed. At the far end stood an iron cabinet built into the wall. Its doors carried no handle, only the crown and thorn, she asked. "It is one of its relay stations," Luca replied. "The original system runs beneath the entire city." Mila glanced at the receiver. "A secret telephone network for vampires? For the throne. It predates electricity by several centuries. That makes even less sense. It will make more sense when you stop assuming it was built by human engineers." The calmness in his voice irritated her, but it also kept panic from taking control. She reached the cabinet. "What now? Place your pendant against the symbol." Mila obeyed. A soft chime sound inside the wall, followed by a woman's recorded voice. "Collins' bloodline confirmed. Final keeper recognized." Mila stepped back. The cabinet doors opened. Inside rested a narrow black case, a stack of yellowed letters, and a glass key no longer than her palm. It looked carved from frozen smoke. The paper package in her hand began to vibrate. "Open the delivery," Luca said. Mila tore the top carefully. Inside was a velvet sleeve bearing the name Evelyn Collins. Her throat tightened. She removed a small brass cylinder and fitted it into the center of the black case without knowing how she knew where it belonged. The case clicked open. A tiny reel began turning by itself. Her mother's voice filled the corridor. "Mila, if you are hearing this, then Luca has been taken and I am no longer there to protect you from what comes next." Mila forgot to breathe. Evelyn's voice was weaker than she remembered, but unmistakable. "You were never meant to inherit my duty. I wanted you to have a human life with ordinary worries and ordinary joys. But Cassian Vale learned about the line. He will search for the final keeper, and once the throne is silent, he will search for you." Footsteps sounded at the top of the staircase. Mila held the receiver tighter. The recording continued. "Trust Luca only when he tells you the truth about me. Ask him what happened at Greyhaven Bridge." The reel stopped. Silence returned. Mila stared at the glass key. "What happened at Greyhaven Bridge?" Luca did not answer. "You promised every part of the truth." His voice came lower. "Your mother was supposed to meet me there 15 years ago. She had evidence that Cassian was corrupting the council. I arrived too late." Mila closed her eyes. Rain, hospital lights. Her mother appearing after what Mila had been told was a highway accident. Too late for what? To prevent Cassian from reaching her. "Did you see him?" "No, but I found his seal in her car. And Evelyn lived long enough to tell me he had discovered your name." Mila looked at the photograph in her hand. "Then why did you not find me?" "She made me swear not to." His answer was immediate. "She believed distance from my world was the only protection I could give you. I kept that promise until tonight." Mila wanted to be angry. Anger would have been easier than the ache spreading through her chest. "The men upstairs said you were the reason she died." "Cassian has built his rule on truths cut in half. Your mother was endangered because she served me. That guilt is mine. Her death was his choice." The footsteps entered the corridor. Mila saw shadows moving beneath the yellow lights nearly 100 feet away. "Take the key," Luca said. "There is a service tunnel behind the cabinet." Mila lifted the glass key. The instant her fingers closed around it, red light raced across the floor. Every lamp went dark. Then her dead cell phone rang inside her jacket. She pulled it out. The screen glowed with a single message. "Royal Line Rest Cord." Luca's voice now came from both the receiver and the phone. "They can see the signal," he warned. The polite man stepped into the red light at the far end of the corridor. He was tall, silver-haired, and smiling as though he had come to welcome her home. "Miss Collins," he called. "Put down the key." Mila backed toward the cabinet. "Who is he?" she whispered. Luca's reply was colder than the tunnel. "Cassian Vale's first commander." The man raised one open hand. "You do not know what Luca Ferraro truly is." Mila touched the photograph beneath her arm and found the hidden latch behind the cabinet. "Maybe not," she said, keeping her eyes on him. But I know what you did to my mother." The service door opened behind her. She stepped through and pulled it shut as the commander's smile disappeared. Mamila pulled the service door closed and heard the lock seal behind her with a sharp metallic click. The passage beyond was no wider than a closet and sloped downward beneath the city. Her dead phone glowed in one hand, the glass key rested in the other, and Luca's voice now came through the speaker with startling clarity. "Keep moving," he said. "The commander will open that door, then tell me where this tunnel ends." At a maintenance chamber beneath Hawthorne Street, about half a mile east, Mila began walking quickly. Pipes ran along the ceiling, trembling whenever thunder rolled above. "And after that, you leave Blackridge." "No." Luca went silent. Mila tightened her grip on the key. "My mother left me a message. Those men know my name. You are trapped somewhere, and Cassian Vale has spent 15 years hiding what happened. I am not driving home and pretending none of this exists. You have $18, an unreliable car, and no protection against the people following you. That is not an argument. That is a list of things I already knew this morning." A quiet breath crossed the line. "You sound like Evelyn. You do not get to use her name to change my mind." The passage curved sharply. Red light suddenly flowed through the glass key, warm enough to brighten Mila's fingers without burning them. The pendant at her throat answered with the same glow. Beneath her shoes, thin crimson lines awakened inside the stone and raced ahead into the darkness. Then every clock she carried changed at once. Her phone displayed 11:58, then 11:57, then 11:56. The second hand on her watch began moving backward. Mila stopped. "I see it." "How can you see anything? The line is transmitting what it senses around you." A low pulse filled the tunnel. It matched Mila's heartbeat exactly, one beat, then another. The sound traveled through the walls until the entire passage seemed alive. Luca's voice dropped. "The system is responding to your bloodline. You said it recognized me before. Recognition is not activation. No keeper has awakened this section in 15 years. Mila looked at the glowing key. "What did I do? You chose to carry it after learning the danger. That sounds less like magic and more like a terrible security policy." Despite everything, Luca gave a brief sound that might have been a laugh. It vanished quickly. "There is a junction ahead. Take the left passage." Mila reached 3 archways marked with symbols she could not read. The left one opened before she touched it. Beyond lay a round room filled with rows of antique switchboards, brass cables, and black telephones. None were plugged into electrical outlets, yet every indicator light began glowing as she entered. One telephone rang, then another. Within seconds, dozens rang together, filling the chamber with a deep, rolling chorus. Mila covered one ear. "What is happening?" "The royal network is waking. Every vampire connected to the court can." Far beneath the noise, Mila heard Luca's breathing change. "They will know the king is alive." The telephones stopped ringing at once. A woman's voice emerged from the central switchboard. "Final keeper present, royal heartbeat located." A second pulse joined Mila's, slower, stronger. It came through the walls like distant thunder. Mila understood before Luca explained. "That is yours," she whispered. "Yes." The two rhythms moved separately for several seconds. Then the glass key flashed and they aligned. One beat from Mila, one from Luca. The switchboard lights turned from amber to red. Across the chamber, words appeared on a narrow metal panel. "King imprisoned. Consul compromised. Need." Mila stepped closer. "The system knows you were betrayed. It was built to recognize coercion." Another message appeared. "Hostile access detected." The service door behind her shuddered. The commander had reached the passage. Luca's voice sharpened. "There is a black lever beneath the center panel. Pull it." Mila found the lever but stopped with her hand above it. "What will it do?" "It will broadcast my location to every loyal member of the court." "Cassian? He will receive it too. Then why would I help him find you?" "Because he already knows where I am. The loyalists do not." The door shuddered again. A calm voice carried through the tunnel. "Miss Collins, the king is using your grief. Open the chamber, and no harm will come to you." Mila stared at the message naming the compromised council. "Is there any chance he is telling the truth?" she asked. Luca did not defend himself. "There is always a chance I have not earned your trust." His answer was quiet. "That choice must remain yours." Mila thought of Evelyn's recording, of the hospital window, and of a 600-year-old king who had obeyed one human woman's final wish for 15 years. She pulled the lever. Every telephone in the room rang once. The walls flashed red and Luca's voice thundered through the entire network. "This is Luca Ferraro. Your king lives." The door behind Mila stopped shaking. Beyond it, the commander whispered one word with sudden fear. "Impossible." The silence beyond the service door lasted only 3 seconds. Then the commander spoke in a voice stripped of its earlier politeness. "Shut down the relay." Mila looked across the switchboard as several lights began flashing white. Luca answered through every telephone at once. He cannot enter while the royal signal is active, but the chamber was not built to hold forever. How long do I have? Mila asked. 4 minutes, perhaps less. She searched the room and found no second door. You said this tunnel led beneath Hawthorne Street. The exit is concealed behind the western switchboard. Mila hurried toward the wall, but the glass key pulled against her hand as though drawn toward the center panel. New words appeared beneath the warning. It wants me to do something. Do not touch the panel, Luca said. Why? Because activating the full network will reveal your heartbeat to every member of the court. The service door shook again. A thin line of pale light appeared around its frame. Mila stared at the message. They already know my name. Knowing your name is not the same as being able to find you anywhere in the city. Can the network help your loyalists reach you? Luca hesitated. That was answer enough. Mila placed the glass key into the narrow opening beneath the words. Cold light spread across the switchboard. A woman's voice filled the chamber. Final keeper, confirm voluntary activation. Luca spoke sharply. Mila removed the key. She did not. Will this free you? No. Will it help? Another pause. Yes, the commander called through the door. He will sacrifice you to regain his throne. Mila looked toward the sealed entrance. You keep telling me what Luca will do, but you have not explained why your people killed my mother. The commander's voice remained calm. Evelyn chose the wrong side. That sounds like an explanation from someone who knows he cannot defend the right one. The chamber fell quiet. Mila turned back to the panel. Confirm activation, she said. The glass key brightened. Her heartbeat echoed through the network, followed by Luca's slower rhythm. Across Blackridge, hidden telephones awakened inside old buildings, private estates, sealed offices, and underground rooms. The message traveled through all of them. The king lives. The final keeper stands with him, responds rekindled. One light turned green, then 5, then 12. Luca drew a breath that sounded almost like disbelief. They are answering. How many? Enough to make Cassian afraid. The door's pale outline widened. Mila heard tools moving against the locking mechanism. Luca directed her to the western wall. She found 2 brass switches beneath the lowest row of cables and pulled them together. The switchboard folded inward, revealing a narrow ladder rising through a brick shaft. Climb, Luca ordered. Mila removed the key and slipped it into her jacket pocket beside the photograph. She placed the old receiver on the desk, but Luca's voice continued through her cell phone. The shaft opens into the basement of a closed bakery. The alley behind it leads to Hawthorne Street. Mila climbed quickly. The paper package had served its purpose, so she left the empty bag behind, but kept her mother's recording cylinder. Halfway up, she heard the service door open below. The commander entered the relay chamber and looked toward the ladder. Miss Collins, he called. There is nowhere in Blackridge that Cassian Vale cannot reach. Mila kept climbing. Then he should have answered the phone himself. She reached the top and pushed against a wooden hatch. It opened beneath an old flour table. The bakery smelled of dust, cinnamon, and cold brick. She lowered the hatch and dragged a heavy storage bin over it, buying herself a little time. Outside, the storm had weakened to steady rain. Hawthorne Street was empty except for dark storefronts and a flickering traffic light. Mila pulled her jacket tighter and stepped into the alley. Where do I go now? She asked. There is a church 6 blocks north, Luca said. St. Orison's. Use the side entrance and ask for Father Adrian Shaw. A priest? A former royal archivist. Of course he is. Mila hurried beneath the awnings. Behind 2 figures entered the alley, their grey coats darkened by rain. Luca's voice became low and precise. Do not run in a straight line. Turn left at the laundromat, cross through the parking garage, and stay beneath the lights. Why the lights? They are not permitted to take you where human witnesses might see. Mila followed his directions, weaving through the sleeping city while the figures remained 1 block behind. At the garage entrance, a black sedan rolled across her path. Mila stopped. A woman with silver hair sat inside, wearing a dark coat marked with the crown and thorn. She lowered her head respectfully. Miss Collins, she said, I heard the king's call. Luca spoke through Mila's phone. Her name is Elena Ward. She is loyal. Mila studied the woman. How do I know that? Elena raised an old black telephone receiver from the seat beside her. Luca's voice came through it at the same moment. Because Cassian's people cannot hear this line anymore. The grey-coated figures reached the corner. Elena opened the door wider. Please, the court is dividing, and you are the reason the loyalists finally know where to stand. Mila entered the sedan. As it pulled away, dozens of windows across Blackridge lit one after another, each hiding a telephone that had just carried the voice of a king believed lost. The sedan moved through the rain without headlights for the first 2 blocks, guided by the faint glow of street lamps reflected across the wet pavement. Mila sat in the back beside Elena Ward, one hand closed around the glass key inside her jacket and the other holding her cell phone near her ear. Luca remained silent for nearly a minute. The quiet felt different now, not empty toward Mila. His Majesty is listening to the court. Mila looked at the phone. Through every active branch of the midnight line. Elena's pale blue eyes shifted to the dark windows outside. Your signal woke people who had been ordered to stay silent. How many are loyal to him? More than Cassian believed. Fewer than we need. The sedan turned north. Blackridge looked ordinary from inside the car. Closed diners, gas stations. Apartment windows glowing above corner stores. Mila wondered how many hidden rooms existed beneath them, how many old telephones had rung while the human city slept. You said the court is dividing, Mila said. What happens now? Elena answered carefully. Cassian will claim the broadcast was forged. He will tell the council that you activated forbidden equipment and are holding the king against his will. I have never even seen him. Luca's voice returned through the phone. That will not matter. Mila leaned closer to the speaker. Why did your own people wait until now to act? Because Cassian presented them with my seal and a written order transferring authority to him. Was the order real? The seal was. Luca paused. The words were not. Elena lowered her gaze. We were told the king had entered voluntary isolation because of an illness of the blood. Mila studied her. Did you believe that? For one night. On the second, Cassian closed the Eastern archives. On the third, he dismissed the palace guards who had served Luca for more than a century. By the seventh, belief was no longer the issue. We lacked proof. And now you have my heartbeat on a telephone network. We have his voice using the royal command frequency, Elena said. That is proof enough for those who remember the old laws. The sedan slowed beside St. Orison's church, a narrow stone building wedged between a parking garage and a 24-hour grocery store. No cross stood above the entrance. Instead, a plain brass bell hung beneath a shallow roof, and down a hallway lit by small yellow lamps. At the end waited an elderly man in a charcoal sweater, his white hair neatly combed, his expression calm despite the hour. Mila Collins, he said. You have your mother's eyes. Mila stopped. Father Adrian Shaw? Once Father Adrian, now simply Adrian. He opened the door behind him. Come inside. There is very little time, and you deserve more truth than anyone has given you. The room beyond had no pews. Shelves covered every wall, filled with ledgers, old maps and black telephone receivers labeled by date. At the center stood a table beneath a hanging lamp. Adrian placed Evelyn's photograph beside it after Mila handed it to him. His fingers rested on the frame for a moment. She left this with the relay house 20 years ago, he said, along with instructions that could only be carried out after Luca vanished and the line recognized you. Mila removed the brass recording cylinder from her pocket. She planned tonight? Not the date, the conditions. Adrian opened a drawer and removed a sealed envelope bearing Mila's name. The pharmacy order was created by a legal trust. It checked the royal network every night. When Luca's signal disappeared for 7 consecutive days, it released the delivery request to the nearest registered Collins descendant. Mila stared at the envelope. So the order found me. Your mother designed it to. I did not know through the phone. Adrian looked toward the device. Evelyn did not tell you everything, Your Majesty. She rarely did. For the first time, warmth touched Luca's voice. Adrian broke the seal and unfolded a single page. There is more. Evelyn suspected Cassian had learned how to corrupt the royal chains, but she could not prove it. She believed he would eventually imprison Luca and use the king's silence to seize the court. Mila's mouth went dry. Why did she think I could stop him? Adrian turned the page toward her. A diagram showed the glass key, the silver pendant, and a circular chamber beneath a building marked Ferraro Citadel. Because the midnight line does not answer to vampires, he said. It was created by human keepers after the first king broke his oath to them. Only a Collins can transfer control of the royal bindings. Mila looked at the glowing key through the fabric of her jacket. Transfer it to whom? Adrian's face grew grave. To the rightful king or to the person trying to replace him? Elena moved closer to the door. Cassian knows she has the key. Yes, Adrian said. And he knows she does not yet understand the oath. Mila looked down at her mother's handwriting. A final sentence had been written beneath the diagram. Do not trust the crown until the king chooses your freedom over his own. Mila raised the phone. Luca, did you know using the key could bind me to your throne? Silence answered her. Elena turned toward the device. Adrian closed his eyes. Mila felt the truth before Luca spoke. Yes, he said at last. Then why did you lead me to it? His voice came low and steady. Because without it, Cassian will control the court. But I will not ask you to use it. You already asked me to carry it, not to surrender your life to me. Mila stared at her mother's warning. Outside the room, the church bell rang once, though no one stood near its rope. Elena went still. That is the Eastern alarm. Adrian crossed to the window and moved the curtain aside. Black vehicles were stopping along both ends of the street. Luca's voice sharpened. Cassian found you. Mila folded Evelyn's letter and placed it inside her jacket. Then I think it is time I learned the oath before he gets through that door. Adrian crossed the room and opened a narrow cabinet hidden behind a row of ledgers. Inside lay a leather-bound book secured with a silver clasp. The oath is not a spell, he said. It is a contract between the throne and the keeper. Every word matters because the line records intention, not obedience. Mila moved beside him while Elena checked the hallway. Outside, car doors closed one after another. No one shouted. No one rushed the church. The silence carried more pressure than any threat. Adrian opened the book to a page covered in faded handwriting. The keeper names the ruler who will receive control of the royal bindings. Then the ruler must answer with a vow of restraint. Mila looked at her phone. What kind of restraint? Luca replied. I must promise that your service remains voluntary, that your mind and choices remain your own, and that the throne will never claim your life as property. Mila read the final line on her mother's letter again. Do not trust the crown until the king chooses your freedom over his own. And if you refuse that promise, she asked. The transfer fails, Adrian said. The bindings remain under Cassian's control. A firm knock sounded at the side entrance. Elena looked through the narrow window. Council officers. 6 at this door, more across the street. A man called from outside. By order of Acting Regent Cassian Vale, Mila Collins is to be taken into protective custody. Mila almost laughed at the careful wording. They make kidnapping sound like paperwork. Elena drew the curtain. Cassian controls the official guard. If we resist, he will call us traitors. Luca's voice came through the phone. There is an old passage beneath the archive room. Adrian shook his head. Sealed 40 years ago. The Foundation plans show a second access point behind the eastern shelves. Adrian studied the wall, then moved 3 large books. A brass switch appeared. He pressed it. Nothing happened. The mechanism has no power. Mila removed the glass key. Red light immediately traveled through the silver clasp of the oath book, then across the table and into the wall. The hidden switch clicked. A section of shelving moved aside, revealing a stone passage. Elena stepped toward it, but another voice came through the church speakers. There will be no need to run. The lamps dimmed. Cassian Vale's face appeared on the dark screen of an old security monitor above the doorway. He looked composed, almost kind, with silver at his temples and a dark suit beneath a grey overcoat. Miss Collins, he said, you have been frightened, misled, and placed in danger by people protecting an obsolete king. Mila held the glass key at her side. Did you kill my mother? Adrian turned toward the screen. Elena went completely still. Cassian's expression did not change. Evelyn made choices that placed her beyond the protection of the court. That was not my question. A faint smile touched his mouth. You have her persistence. Luca's voice sounded from Mila's phone, cold and controlled. Answer her. Cassian glanced toward the speaker as though Luca stood in the room. You lost the right to command me when you allowed a human keeper to interfere with succession. There was no succession, Luca said. There was betrayal. Cassian ignored him. Mila, the king has not told you what the oath requires. Once you transfer the bindings, the Midnight Line will recognize you as permanent keeper. You will be connected to every royal emergency for the rest of your life. Luca told me. For the first time, Cassian's composure shifted only slightly. Then he admitted he brought you here knowing the cost. Mila looked at the phone. Luca did not defend himself. He simply said, You may leave, I will not stop you. Cassian leaned closer to the camera, and when he remains imprisoned, his loyalists will blame you. When the court collapses, humans will suffer beside us. He offers freedom while making you responsible for the consequences. Mila felt the trap inside the words. Cassian did not need to force her. He only needed guilt to do the work. She looked at Adrian. Is there another way to free Luca? Adrian answered honestly. Not one we know. Can Cassian use the key without me? No, but he can keep Luca bound indefinitely if the line remains inactive. The knock sounded again, louder this time. Miss Collins, the officer outside, called, Open the door and place the key on the floor. Mila closed the oath book. I am not making this choice inside a room Cassian has surrounded. She slipped the key and her mother's letter into her jacket. We used the passage. Elena entered first. Adrian followed with the oath book. Mila stopped at the opening and raised the phone. Luca, where does this lead? To the old courthouse tunnel, then beneath Ferraro's citadel. Your prison? Close to it. Cassian's voice filled the speakers behind her. Walk into that tunnel, and the council will name you an enemy of the court. Mila looked back at his image. You already decided what I was before I answered the telephone. She stepped into the passage. The shelves closed behind her, cutting off Cassian's face and the officers at the door. Darkness surrounded them until the glass key awakened in Mila's hand. Red lines spread across the floor, forming a path toward the heart of the city. Then Luca spoke quietly through the phone. Mila, when we reach the citadel, they will put you before the council. Good, she said. I have questions for them too. Far ahead, a bell rang beneath the earth and the hidden road to the vampire court opened. The underground road narrowed as Mila, Adrian and Elena moved toward Ferraro's citadel. Red light from the glass key traveled ahead of them, revealing stone arches marked with names and dates older than Blackridge itself. Mila kept her cell phone near her ear, but Luca had fallen silent again. Only his steady heartbeat remained inside the midnight line, slow enough to sound calm, strong enough to remind her that he was still alive. How far? Mila asked. Elena glanced at the symbols carved along the wall. Less than a quarter mile, and the council is waiting. Cassian will make certain of it. Adrian carried the oath book against his chest. He needs witnesses. If he accuses you privately, the loyalists will question him. If he condemns you before the full court, fear may do the rest. Mila looked at the old man. What exactly will they accuse me of? Stealing a royal relic, activating a forbidden network. Anything true, you did activate the network. After their acting regent imprisoned their king, Adrian gave a small nod. That distinction will matter to some. The passage ended at a pair of bronze doors nearly 15 feet high. Elena placed her palm against the center seal. Nothing happened. Mila stepped closer, and the doors opened before she touched them. Cold air swept through the tunnel. Beyond lay a vast hall of black stone, lit by rows of yellow lamps suspended from iron chains. Hundreds of figures stood along raised galleries. Their faces were pale, their clothing formal and dark, and their silence followed Mila as she entered. No one looked at Adrian. No one looked at Elena. Every eye settled on the human woman holding the glass key. At the far end of the chamber stood an empty throne beneath a silver crest. Cassian Vale waited below it. The commander from the relay house stood at his right side. Mila Collins, Cassian said, his voice carrying through the hall without effort. You have entered the royal court while carrying property of the crown. Mila stopped in the center of the floor. It belonged to my mother. Your mother was entrusted with it. She was not its owner. Neither are you. A low murmur moved through the galleries. Cassian raised one hand and silence returned. You have been influenced by a prisoner who claims to be our king. Mila lifted her phone. He does not claim it. Your own network recognized him. A network you unlawfully awakened. A network your people were trying to keep silent. Cassian's expression remained composed, but the commander beside him shifted his weight. Adrian stepped forward. The Midnight Line confirmed a compromised council and denied succession authority. Cassian looked at him with mild disappointment. Adrian Shaw, you abandoned your office decades ago. I abandoned your version of it. Another murmur spread through the hall. Cassian turned back to Mila. Place the key on the floor. You will be escorted home, your memories will be sealed, and this misunderstanding will end. Mila thought of the overdue notice beneath her apartment door, her broken car, and the ordinary life she had believed was all she possessed. For 1 second, going home sounded almost possible. Then she remembered her mother's recorded voice. She remembered the commander saying Evelyn had chosen the wrong side. Will Luca be released? Mila asked. Will my mother's death be investigated? That matter was closed 15 years ago. Then this is not an offer. It is another silence. Cassian's eyes cooled. You stand in a court whose laws you do not understand. Then explain the law that lets an acting regent hide the king for 7 nights. Several figures in the gallery turned toward one another. Cassian looked up at them. The king withdrew voluntarily because his condition threatened the stability of the court. Mila raised the phone higher. Luca, did you withdraw through the speaker? Cassian's mouth curved slightly. Your mysterious voice appears to have abandoned you. The lamps flickered. Mila felt Luca's heartbeat vanish from the line. Fear rose sharply inside her, but she kept her face still. Then every telephone in the chamber rang at once. Black receivers hidden beneath desks beside the throne and along the gallery walls cried out in a single powerful note. The sound stopped. Luca's voice filled the hall. The entire court froze. I was confined under forged authority by Cassian Vale. One by one, figures in the gallery lowered their heads. Cassian remained standing. A voice can be imitated. Luca answered, Then perhaps you will recognize the command you obeyed when you sealed the eastern chamber. A series of tones sounded through the network. The silver crest above the throne opened, revealing a hidden panel. Red words appeared across it. Royal identity confirmed. The chamber erupted in whispers. Cassian lifted his hand again, but fewer people obeyed. This proves only that the old system has been manipulated by a human keeper. She has manipulated nothing, Luca said. Mila Collins acted under my protection. Cassian looked directly at her. Protection? She is the reason the court now stands at the edge of conflict. Luca's reply was quiet enough to make the hall listen harder. No, she is the reason the truth reached it. The commander stepped toward Mila. Surrender the key. Before he could take another step, every yellow lamp turned red. Luca's voice sharpened. Touch her and you answer to your king. The commander stopped. Across the galleries, loyal vampires began kneeling. But enough. Cassian watched the balance of the room shift away from him. Then he smiled. Very well, he said. Let the humans see the king she has chosen. A section of the floor opened behind the empty throne, revealing a stairway descending into darkness. Bring her to the royal chamber. Mila looked at the opening and understood the trap. Cassian no longer needed to take the key before witnesses. He only needed to bring her close enough to Luca for the oath to begin. Mila descended the stairway behind the throne, with Cassian several steps ahead and the commander behind her. Adrian and Elena were ordered to remain in the council chamber, but neither looked away as the stone floor closed above Mila's head. The last thing she heard before darkness surrounded her was the quiet movement of loyal vampires refusing to leave the hall. Yellow lamps awakened along the stairwell one by one. Their light fell across walls carved with royal names, broken oaths, and dates reaching back more than 600 years. Mila kept the glass key hidden inside her jacket and held her cell phone close, but the screen had gone black. Luca's voice no longer reached her. The royal chamber blocks outside signals, Cassian said without turning. The king preferred privacy when he built it. You mean when you turned it into a prison? Words become emotional when people lack context. Mila looked at the commander behind her. Is that what you told yourself about my mother? His expression tightened, but Cassian answered for him. Evelyn understood the danger of allowing a ruler to become more powerful than the system around him. Then why did she protect Luca? Because loyalty can survive long after reason fails. They reached the bottom. A circular iron door stood open beneath an arch of black stone. Beyond it lay a chamber larger than Mila expected, cold and nearly empty. Silver chains stretched from 4 pillars toward the center, where a man stood with one wrist bound at his side and the other resting against a stone table. He wore a black shirt beneath a long, dark coat, both marked by 7 days of confinement but still arranged with severe precision. His skin was white, his face even paler than Mila's, almost colorless beneath the yellow light. Dark hair framed sharp features that looked exactly as they had in the photograph taken 26 years earlier. But the photograph had not captured his eyes. They were fixed on Mila with an intensity that made the entire room seem to narrow around her. Luca Ferraro did not look like a prisoner. The chamber looked like something holding its breath in his presence. Mila, he said. Hearing her name without static changed everything. His voice was deeper in the room, quieter than it had been through the telephone, yet every chain responded with a faint metallic hum. Mila stopped several feet away. You look tired. One corner of his expression shifted. You crossed half the city while being pursued by my court, and that is your first observation. I had time to prepare better questions. Cassian stepped between them, touching reunion aside. We are here to resolve the succession. Luca's gaze never left Mila. There is no succession. There will be when she transfers the bindings. Cassian gestured toward the stone table. At its center was an opening shaped exactly like the glass key. Ancient words circled it in silver. Adrian's oath book had shown only part of the design. Mila moved closer but did not remove the key. Tell me what happens if I place it there. Cassian smiled. Control returns to the royal line. That is not what I asked, Luca answered. The key does not open the chains. It allows the keeper to name who controls them. Mila looked at him. You or Cassian? Yes. And what happens to the keeper? Luca's silence confirmed the warning in Evelyn's letter. Cassian stepped beside the table. The Midnight Line accepts a permanent guardian. You will hear every royal alarm, every threat to the throne, every emergency carried through the network. The connection cannot be removed by distance. Mila kept her eyes on Luca. For how long? For the rest of your natural life, he said. Would it control my choices? Not if the oath is completed correctly, and if it is not, Cassian answered with practiced calm, then the line may bind your will to the authority you name. Mila felt the glass key growing cold inside her jacket. My mother knew this. She did, Luca said. That is why she refused to complete the transfer when Cassian first attempted to corrupt the throne. Mila turned toward Cassian. You tried this 15 years ago. I tried to prevent the court from depending on one king and one human family, by threatening her, by offering her a place in a stronger system. Luca's voice became dangerously quiet. You offered her obedience disguised as duty. Cassian ignored him and looked at Mila. Evelyn refused, she ran, she hid you. Then she left behind a plan that placed the same burden in your hands. Mila thought of the delivery trust, the recorded message, and the pendant her mother had fastened around her neck beside a hospital window. She did not place the burden in my hands, Mila said. She placed the choice there. The chains around Luca tightened with a low sound as Cassian touched the control seal on the table. Luca remained still, but Mila saw strain across. Enough, Cassian said. Insert the key and name me regent. I will release him into guarded exile. Refuse, and the court will remain divided until human lives are caught in the consequences. Mila looked at Luca. If I name you, will you accept the oath, even if refusing keeps you here? Yes, Cassian laughed softly. A beautiful answer from a king who knows she will blame herself if she walks away. Luca stepped as far forward as the chains allowed. Listen to me, Mila, you owe me nothing, not your life, not your loyalty, not the future your mother wanted for you. Take the key and leave this chamber. Cassian's expression finally hardened. Mila understood her mother's final test. Do not trust the crown until the king chooses your freedom over his own. Luca had just done exactly that. She removed the glass key from her jacket and placed it above the opening in the table. Red light awakened beneath her hand. Cassian leaned closer, certain she had surrendered. Mila looked at Luca and asked, "What are the exact words of the final vow?" The red light beneath Mila's hand spread across the stone table, tracing the ancient words in a slow circle. Luca's chains answered with a low metallic hum. Cassian stood close enough to watch every movement, his confidence returning as the glass key settled into the opening. "The final vow," Mila repeated. "What are the exact words?" Luca held her gaze. The keeper names the rightful authority. The authority then swears that the keeper remains free in thought, action, and departure. Cassian's expression sharpened. "That clause is ceremonial." "No," Luca said. "It is the only clause that matters." Mila looked down at the silver writing. The symbols no longer appeared unfamiliar. As the key awakened, their meaning formed inside her mind with quiet certainty. "I carry the line by choice. I return the night by truth. No crown may own the hand that restores it." She understood then why Cassian needed her frightened and uninformed. The oath could not be stolen, it could only be given. "Begin," Cassian ordered. Mila placed both hands on the table. The chamber grew silent. Even the yellow lamps stopped flickering. "I stand as the final keeper of the midnight line," she said. Her voice traveled through the stone and returned from every wall. Far above them, hidden telephones throughout the citadel awakened. "I carry no command but my own. I recognize the royal bindings and the authority they were made to protect." Cassian moved closer. "Name the regent." Mila turned Cassian Vale. Satisfaction crossed his face. The red light shifted toward his side of the table. Luca did not move, but his eyes remained fixed on Mila with complete trust. Cassian extended one hand over the control seal. "Continue," Mila did. "You sought the throne during the king's enforced silence. You concealed his living voice. You used forged authority to divide the court." The light beneath Cassian's hand turned white. His satisfaction vanished. "They are the truth recorded by the line." The chamber filled with his own voice, pulled from 15 years of hidden commands. "Evelyn has refused the transfer. Find the child before Luca does. Seal the eastern chamber. Present the forged order at dawn." One statement followed another, each carried through every telephone above. Cassian reached for the glass key, but the stone table sealed around it before his fingers arrived. Mila's voice remained steady. "The midnight line rejects authority built on coercion." The commander stepped forward, then stopped when Luca spoke. "Stand down." 2 words, nothing more. The commander looked from Cassian to the chains, then slowly lowered his hands. Cassian's calm finally broke. "You do not understand what you are restoring. Luca ruled before your grandparents were born. He will outlive every promise he makes to you." Mila looked at the bound king. "Then he will have a very long time to prove whether he deserves the trust." She faced the table again. "I name Luca Ferraro, lawful king of the Ferraro court, as the only authority recognized by the royal bindings." Red light surged from the key into the floor. The chains pulled tight for one final second. Luca closed his eyes, not from fear, but from the force of something ancient testing the words. Mila continued. I return the knight to Luca Ferraro, under the condition that no keeper belongs to the crown, no human life may be claimed as royal property, and no oath given freely may be turned into obedience. The chamber waited. Luca opened his eyes. I accept the throne under those conditions, he said. His voice filled the entire network. Mila Collins remains free in thought, action, memory, and departure. Her service begins only by her choice and ends by her choice. The crown claims no part of her life. The glass key flashed like a captured star. The silver chains released from Luca's wrists and fell quietly to the floor. No explosion followed, no violent force. Only a deep breath moving through the citadel, as though the ancient structure had finally remembered its rightful name. Luca stepped away from the pillars. Even after 7 days of confinement, he moved with controlled dignity. The council will never accept the word of a human over mine. The chamber telephone rang. Mila lifted the receiver from the table. Adrian's voice came through. The full court heard every recorded order. The council has suspended Cassian's authority. Elena spoke beside him. The royal guard is awaiting the king's command. Luca looked at the commander, opened the chamber. The man obeyed. As the iron door unlocked, Cassian stared at Mila. Your mother believed she could change this world too. Mila removed the glass key from the table. She already did. They returned to the council hall together. Luca walked beside Mila, not ahead of her. When the throne came into view, the entire court lowered its head. Cassian remained standing alone beneath the galleries, while his recorded commands glowed across the silver crest. Luca stopped before him. You will receive a public hearing under the laws you tried to erase. Cassian looked toward the kneeling court and understood that the silence protecting him was gone. The guards escorted him away without disturbance. Luca turned to Mila as the yellow lamps returned to their natural color. The line is yours to leave, he said quietly. Mila looked at the throne, the key, and the hundreds of vampires waiting for a command. Not yet, she answered. My mother waited 15 years for the truth to be heard. I want to hear what happens next. By the time the court reconvened, the storm above Blackridge had weakened to a quiet rain. Luca stood before the empty throne rather than sitting upon it, while Mila remained beside Adrian and Elena beneath the silver crest. Cassian Vale faced the council from the center of the chamber, surrounded by guards who had once obeyed his every command. No one spoke until the midnight line began replaying the records it had preserved. His forged orders appeared across the crest. His instructions to silence loyal officers followed. Then came the message from 15 years earlier, directing his commander to stop Evelyn Collins before she reached Greyhaven Bridge. Mila listened without looking away. The recording did not describe what happened afterward. It did not need to. Cassian's own voice established his intention, his fear of Evelyn's evidence, and his effort to erase the last human keeper. When the final message ended, the chamber remained silent. Luca turned to the council. You have heard the truth without interpretation. Decide according to the law. An older councilwoman rose from the first gallery. Cassian Vale is stripped of rank, title, and authority pending permanent confinement. Every decree issued under the forged transfer is revoked. One by one, the other council members agreed. A few hesitated, but none defended him. You think restoring old rules will save this court? Luca's expression did not change. No, I think truth gives us the chance to build better ones. The guards escorted Cassian from the hall. His commander followed under separate custody after surrendering the remaining access codes to the eastern chamber. There was no celebration, only the slow release of a fear that had controlled the court for years. Luca then faced Mila. Evelyn Collins served this throne with honor. Her name will be restored to the royal record, and every accusation against her will be removed. The silver crest changed. Evelyn's name appeared beneath the words "Final Keeper of the Midnight Line." Mila pressed her lips together, but tears still warmed her eyes. She had spent 15 years believing her mother had left behind only debt, unanswered questions, and a necklace. Now an entire hidden world stood witness to what Evelyn had protected. Adrian placed a gentle hand over Mila's shoulder. She wanted you to live free of this place, he said. She also wanted you to know the truth when freedom was no longer possible without it. Luca descended from the dais and stopped several feet from Mila. The court owes your mother compensation that was withheld after her death. It will be transferred to her legal heir. Mila gave him a tired look. That sounds like royal language for money. It is. How much? Elena handed her a printed statement. Mila stared at the number. It was enough to pay every medical balance attached to Evelyn's name, replace Mila's failing car, and leave more than she had earned in years of deliveries. I did not help you for this, Mila said. I know, Luca replied. That is why it is repayment, not a reward. The distinction mattered. She folded the paper and placed it beside her mother's letter. Several hours later, after the council had sealed Cassian's records and loyal officers had reopened the Eastern archives, Mila found Luca alone on a high balcony overlooking Blackridge. Dawn was beginning to soften the horizon, turning the rain clouds grey and gold. Luca had changed into a clean black coat. Without chains around him, he seemed even more powerful. Yet the first light revealed the exhaustion beneath his stillness. Mila stood beside the stone railing. Do vampires dislike sunrise, or is that another thing movies got wrong? Direct sunlight is uncomfortable, Luca said. It is not a dramatic death sentence. Good. I have had enough dramatic surprises for one night. For a moment neither spoke. The city below looked ordinary again. Cars moved along wet streets. A bus stopped near Hawthorne Avenue. Somewhere, people were waking for work without knowing a hidden kingdom had nearly changed rulers beneath their feet. Luca looked toward the horizon. Why did you stay after the chamber opened? Mila thought about the question. Because everyone had stopped listening to you. He turned toward her. That is not a sufficient reason to risk your life. Maybe not to a king. She met his eyes. But through the phone you did not sound like a king. You sounded like someone trapped in a dark room while the world decided his silence meant consent. Luca was quiet for several seconds. Most humans who learn what I am respond with fear. I was afraid. You continued anyway. Mila rested her hands on the cold railing. Fear tells you something matters. It does not always tell you to run. The pale light touched Luca's face, making his skin almost white against the dark collar of his coat. I stopped believing kindness could exist without ambition, he said. 6 centuries is a long time to watch generosity become a weapon. Then you have been around the wrong people. A faint smile reached his eyes. Possibly. He removed a small black receiver from inside his coat and placed it on the railing between them. The midnight line recognizes you, but the choice remains yours. You may leave today. Your memories will remain untouched. No member of this court will follow you. Mila looked at the receiver, then at the city. And if I stay, you decide the terms. That answer carried no command, no debt, no hidden chain. Mila picked up the receiver, listening to the soft hum of the restored network. I am not promising forever, she said. I would not accept forever given under exhaustion. Then I will stay long enough to understand what my mother protected. Luca inclined his head, not as a king receiving service, but as a man accepting a boundary. Below them, the first sunlight crossed Blackridge. For the first time in 15 years, Mila felt that her mother's story had not ended in silence. It had reached the one person willing to answer. 3 months later, Mila stood in the restored communications room beneath Ferraro's citadel as morning light filtered through narrow windows near the ceiling. The chamber no longer looked like a forgotten machine waiting for disaster. The old switchboards had been cleaned, the brass cables polished, and each black telephone marked with the district it served. Human neighborhoods appeared beside vampire territories on the new maps covering the walls. Luca had kept his first promise. The Midnight Line would no longer exist only to protect a throne. It would protect anyone caught between the two worlds. Mila adjusted the silver pendant at her throat and reviewed the final report from Cassian Vale's public hearing. The evidence preserved by the network had been examined by the full council. Cassian had admitted forging Luca's transfer order after every recorded command was verified. He had been stripped of his position and confined in the same eastern chamber where he had hidden the king, though the royal bindings had been removed and replaced with ordinary safeguards. His former commander had cooperated with the investigation, revealing the names of every official involved in Evelyn Collins's death and Luca's imprisonment. Those officials had lost their authority, and none remained inside the restored court. Evelyn's name now stood in the royal archive, beneath a simple inscription. She protected freedom when obedience would have been easier. Mila had chosen the words herself. Her mother's unpaid compensation had cleared every medical debt that had followed Mila since childhood. Mila replaced her failing car, repaired the roof of her small apartment, and placed the remaining money in a trust that helped human families harmed by secret conflicts they had never understood. She kept the apartment even after Luca offered her rooms in the citadel. It reminded everyone, including the king, that she stayed by choice. Adrian Shaw returned to the archives as the court's official historian, while Elena Ward became director of the newly formed Peace Office. Together they created rules requiring human representation whenever royal decisions affected the city above. Some council members objected. Luca listened to every complaint, then approved the rules anyway. He had ruled for more than 6 centuries, but Mila noticed that he now asked questions before giving commands. He also learned to drink coffee. Though he considered the cinnamon blend from the bakery on Hawthorne Street an insult to good judgment, Mila considered his opinion an insult to coffee. Their disagreements became one of the few sounds that made the ancient halls feel alive. That morning, Luca entered the communications room wearing a dark coat, his face still paler than any human's beneath the yellow lamps. He placed a folder beside Mila. The council approved the final reform. Mila opened it. The permanent keeper requirement had been abolished. No Collins descendant and no human after her could ever be forced into lifelong service through bloodline or inheritance. The Midnight Line would recognize trained volunteers rather than a single family. Mila looked up. You gave away the crown's exclusive control. Several kings before you would disagree. They are no longer available for consultation, she smiled. Convenient. Luca's expression softened. Your mother wanted you to be the last person burdened by the old oath. She was right. Mila closed the folder. The final knot inside her loosened. Evelyn had protected the line because there had been no safer choice. Mila had stayed long enough to create one. The central telephone rang. Its clear tone moved through the chamber, but no alarms followed. Mila checked the indicator. The call came from a human hospital near the eastern edge of Blackridge. She lifted the receiver. A frightened nurse explained that a pale child had arrived alone and would not speak to anyone. The child carried an old court symbol and appeared terrified of the officers waiting outside. Mila listened carefully, gathered the address, and promised that help was coming. When she placed the receiver down, Elena was already preparing a car, and Adrian was searching the archive for the child's family seal, waiting for her decision rather than issuing his own. We go together, she said. Agreed. Before leaving, Mila looked around the room that had once carried only secrets, warnings, and royal commands. Now it carried requests for medicine, reports of missing children, negotiations between neighbors, and quiet voices asking whether anyone was listening. Every call received an answer. At the doorway, Luca paused. Do you regret picking up the telephone that night? Mila thought of the storm, the abandoned mansion, and the stranger who had known her name. She thought of her mother's truth, finally heard after 15 years, and of the king who had chosen her freedom while his own remained uncertain. No, she said, I regret that no one answered sooner. Luca opened the door for her. They walked into the daylight side by side, not as a ruler and his servant, and not as two people bound by an ancient promise. They walked as partners who had chosen the same work. Behind them, another telephone began to ring. A young operator answered before the second tone. Midnight Line, she said. You are not alone. Outside, Blackridge moved beneath a clear sky, unaware of how close its hidden world had come to darkness. Mila stepped into the waiting car, and Luca took the seat beside her. The old curse was gone. Cassian's rule had ended. Evelyn's honor had been restored. The throne had limits, the line had a new purpose, and Mila's future belonged entirely to her. She had entered the mansion with $18, a broken car, and no answers. She left the story with the truth, a place of her own choosing, and the respect of a king who had finally learned that even the coldest power could be changed by one ordinary act of kindness.